Veteran and his dog open the family chest. One letter inside rewrites the entire will overnight. You're about to witness one of the most incredible family discoveries that will completely redefine what it means to uncover hidden truths. A decorated war veteran and his loyal companion are about to make a discovery that will shake the very foundations of everything they thought they knew about family, inheritance, and the power of one letter to change multiple lives forever. This isn't just a story about opening an old chest. It's about how the past can reach across decades to right wrongs, heal wounds, and reveal secrets that will transform an entire family's future. If you're ready for a journey that will keep you on the edge of your seat and restore your faith in justice and redemption, then hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and turn on those notifications, because what happens next will leave you amazed at how one small discovery can change everything. The North Dakota wind howled across the endless prairie with the relentless intensity that had shaped generations of farmers and ranchers who called this unforgiving landscape home. The sound was constant and haunting, carrying with it the sense of wheat stubble, approaching winter, and the vast emptiness that stretched to the horizon in every direction. Master Sergeant Samuel "Sam" Morrison, recently retired from the Army Rangers after 15 years of distinguished service in some of the world's most dangerous combat zones, stood on the wraparound porch of the magnificent Victorian farmhouse he had inherited from his great-aunt Eleanor just 4 months earlier. The house was a testament to the prosperity and ambition of earlier generations, built in 1887 by Sam's great-great-grandfather, Ezra Morrison, who had homesteaded this land during the Great Dakota Territory land rush. The structure rose 3 stories above the prairie, its ornate gingerbread trim and wraparound porches defying the harsh climate that had claimed so many other buildings over the decades. Despite being more than 130 years old, the house remained solid and beautiful, its white paint gleaming in the afternoon sun and its windows reflecting the endless sky that dominated this landscape. The property itself encompassed 640 acres of some of the most fertile farmland in North Dakota, currently leased to neighboring farmers who grew wheat, corn, and soybeans in rotation. The income from the farming leases provided a modest but steady revenue stream that had allowed Eleanor to maintain the property throughout her long life, though Sam suspected there were aspects of the family's financial situation that he didn't yet understand. Beside Sam on the porch sat Dakota, a German shepherd whose black and tan coat rippled in the constant prairie wind. The dog's intelligent amber eyes constantly scanned the horizon, with the alertness that had made him invaluable during their 4 years of partnership in Afghanistan and Iraq. Dakota's ears were in constant motion, tracking the sounds of the prairie, the cry of red-tailed hawks circling overhead, the rustle of dry grass in the wind, the distant rumble of farm equipment working fields miles away. Dakota had been Sam's military working dog, specializing in explosive detection and patrol operations, in environments where a single mistake or moment of inattention could cost lives. The Belgian Malinois had an almost supernatural ability to detect danger, having saved Sam's life and the lives of countless other soldiers by identifying improvised explosive devices, locating hidden weapons caches, and alerting to enemy presence long before human senses could detect any threat. When Sam retired from the military, he had moved heaven and earth to adopt Dakota officially, unwilling to leave behind the partner who had become more than just a working companion. Dakota was family, brother in arms, and the one living being who truly understood the experiences they had shared in combat zones around the world. The adoption process had been complex and expensive, requiring Sam to navigate months of military bureaucracy and pay significant fees, but he would have mortgaged his future to keep Dakota with him. The inheritance of the farmhouse and property had come as a complete and shocking surprise to Sam. He had known about great-aunt Eleanor only in the vaguest terms throughout his childhood and adult life. She was his grandmother's older sister, who had never married, had lived alone on the family farm for more than 70 years, and had maintained minimal contact with the extended family scattered across the country. Sam's own immediate family had lost touch with the North Dakota branch of the Morrison family years ago, and he had been stunned to receive notification from an attorney in Williston that Eleanor Morrison had passed away at age 94 and had left her entire estate to him. The letter from the attorney, James Whitfield of Whitfield and Associates, had been brief and formal, explaining that Eleanor had specified in her will that the property should go to the Morrison family member who has served his country with honor and distinction, who understands the value of sacrifice and dedication, and who possesses the character necessary to preserve and protect the family legacy for future generations. Sam had qualified on all counts, having served multiple combat tours, having been decorated for valor under fire, and having demonstrated the kind of leadership and integrity that had earned him rapid promotion through the enlisted ranks. But Sam had never understood why Eleanor had chosen him specifically, or how she had even known about his military service and personal character when they had never met and had had no contact throughout his entire life. The mystery had deepened when Sam learned from neighbors and local residents that Eleanor had been following his military career closely, subscribing to military publications, maintaining correspondence with people who could provide her with information about his service, and apparently taking great pride in his achievements and decorations. The move to North Dakota had represented a complete change of direction for Sam, who had been struggling with the difficult transition from military to civilian life and hadn't been sure what path to take after retirement. The Army had been his family, his identity and his purpose for 15 years, and civilian life felt alien and purposeless in comparison. The farm offered him an opportunity to build a new life in a place where his military skills and work ethic would be valued, where he could work with his hands and find the kind of purposeful activity that would help him process the experiences and trauma of 15 years in combat zones. The farmhouse itself was a magnificent example of late 19th century Victorian architecture, featuring high ceilings with ornate plasterwork, elaborate woodwork throughout the interior, hardwood floors that gleamed despite their age, and the kind of solid construction that had withstood more than a century of brutal prairie winters. Eleanor had maintained the property meticulously throughout her long life, and Sam had inherited not just a house, but a piece of family history that connected him to roots he had never fully understood or appreciated. The house contained original furnishings, family photographs dating back to the 1880s, and an extensive collection of documents and memorabilia that chronicled the Morrison family's history in North Dakota. Eleanor had been a meticulous record keeper, maintaining detailed family trees, preserving correspondence and business documents, and creating what amounted to a private museum dedicated to preserving the family's legacy. Dakota had adapted to farm life with the remarkable flexibility that characterized working dogs, finding new purposes in patrolling the extensive property boundaries, monitoring for wildlife and potential intruders, and providing Sam with the companionship and emotional support that eased the sometimes overwhelming transition from military structure to civilian independence. The dog seemed to understand that their mission had changed but not ended, and he approached farm life with the same dedication and alertness that had characterized his military service. The German Shepherd had also become fascinated with the house itself, spending hours exploring rooms and corridors, with the systematic thoroughness he had displayed during building searches in combat zones. Dakota's behavior suggested that he was detecting scents, sounds, or other stimuli that warranted investigation, though he showed no signs of alarm that would indicate immediate danger. This particular October morning had dawned clear and bitter cold, with frost covering the prairie grass, and the promise of winter already evident in the crystalline air, and the way the wind cut through even the heaviest jackets. Sam had been exploring the farmhouse systematically since his arrival, familiarizing himself with its layout, condition, and contents, while making plans for necessary repairs and improvements that would preserve the structure for future generations. The house was largely furnished with antiques and family heirlooms that Eleanor had preserved throughout her long life, creating an atmosphere that felt like stepping back in time. Every room contained photographs, documents, and personal items that told the story of the Morrison family's experience in North Dakota, from the original homesteading through the agricultural booms and busts that had shaped the region's development. Most of the house's contents appeared to be well documented and organized, with Eleanor having left detailed lists and explanations for the various family pieces, photographs, and historical items that filled the rooms. She had been meticulous about preserving family history, maintaining detailed records of births, deaths, marriages, military service, and other significant events that had shaped the Morrison family over more than a century of North Dakota residence. Eleanor had also left extensive notes about the house's maintenance needs, the farming operations, and the financial arrangements that governed the property. She had clearly spent considerable time preparing for Sam's eventual inheritance, ensuring that he would have all the information necessary to continue her stewardship of the family legacy. But one area of the house had remained locked and inaccessible since Sam's arrival. A substantial room on the second floor that Eleanor's attorney had mentioned was secured with an antique lock and was to be opened only after Sam had lived in the house for at least 4 months. The attorney had explained that this was Eleanor's specific instruction, written into her will as a formal requirement, though he had no knowledge of what the room contained or why Eleanor had imposed this waiting period. The locked room had become a source of growing curiosity and anticipation for Sam. The door was substantial and clearly original to the house, made of solid oak with brass fittings that had been maintained in excellent condition. The lock itself was an ornate Victorian-era mechanism that appeared to be both functional and decorative, suggesting that the room had been designed to secure valuable or sensitive materials. Dakota had shown particular and persistent interest in the locked room throughout their time in the house, occasionally sitting outside the door for extended periods and displaying the kind of focused attention that had characterized his detection work during their military service. The dog's behavior suggested that he was detecting scents or sounds from within the room that warranted investigation, though he showed no signs of alarm that would indicate danger. Today marked exactly 4 months since Sam had taken possession of the property, and he had decided that it was time to explore the locked room and discover what Eleanor had wanted him to find there. The attorney had provided him with an ornate brass key that appeared to be original to the house, along with a sealed envelope that contained additional instructions that were to be opened only when Sam was ready to access the room. Sam had spent the morning gathering tools and supplies that might be needed to safely access whatever lay behind the locked door. His military experience had taught him to be prepared for any situation, and he wanted to ensure that he could properly preserve and protect whatever Eleanor had stored in the room. The sealed envelope from the attorney contained a brief note written in Eleanor's careful handwriting. "My dear Samuel, what you are about to discover will change your understanding of our family and your place in the world. Please approach this discovery with an open mind, and remember that truth, however shocking, is always preferable to comfortable ignorance. The Morrison family has a legacy that has been hidden for too long, and you are the one who has been chosen to restore and preserve that legacy." The note was signed with Eleanor's full name and dated just 1 month before her death, suggesting that she had prepared these instructions while fully aware that her time was limited. The formality and solemnity of the note suggested that whatever was in the locked room was significant beyond anything Sam had imagined. Sam climbed the stairs to the second floor with Dakota close behind, both of them moving with the quiet precision that had become second nature during years of military operations. The locked room was located at the end of a hallway, lined with family photographs and memorabilia, and Sam could see that the door itself was more substantial than the other doors in the house, suggesting that it had been designed to provide security for valuable contents. The brass key fit perfectly into the antique lock, turning smoothly despite its apparent age and the decades since it had last been used. As Sam opened the door, he was greeted by the scent of old wood, leather, and the faint fragrance of lavender that suggested Eleanor had taken great care to preserve whatever was stored in this room. Sunlight streamed through tall windows that had been covered with heavy curtains, illuminating a space that was much larger than Sam had expected. The room appeared to serve as a combination library, office, and archive, with built-in bookshelves covering 3 walls and containing what looked like decades of family records, correspondence, legal documents, and historical materials. The room was dominated by a massive oak desk that appeared to be an antique of considerable value, surrounded by filing cabinets and storage areas that suggested this had been Eleanor's private study and research center. The desk was covered with neat stacks of documents, photographs, and correspondence, all organized with the meticulous attention to detail that had characterized everything Sam had seen of Eleanor's work. But what immediately caught Sam's attention, and held it with growing fascination, was a large wooden chest positioned prominently in the center of the room. The chest was clearly an antique of exceptional quality, made of what appeared to be walnut, or another premium hardwood, with brass fittings and intricate carving that suggested skilled craftsmanship and considerable expense. Attached to the lid of the chest was a note written in Eleanor's careful handwriting, sealed in a protective plastic sleeve to preserve it from damage. The note read, "For Samuel Morrison, with the hope that understanding the past will help guide your future, and with the knowledge that you have been chosen to carry forward a legacy of which you can be proud. This chest contains the true history of our family and the explanation for choices and events that may have seemed mysterious or unfair. Open with care and know that you are about to discover truths that have been hidden for more than half a century. Sam felt a chill of anticipation and apprehension as he read Eleanor's words and contemplated what might be contained in the chest. The note suggested that there were family secrets or historical information that Eleanor had preserved specifically for him, and that this information might explain not only why he had been chosen as her heir, but also mysteries about the family's past that had never been adequately explained. Dakota approached the chest cautiously, his nose working overtime to process the complex array of scents that emanated from the old wood and whatever was stored inside. The dog's body language indicated intense interest, but not alarm, suggesting that whatever was in the chest didn't represent a threat but was certainly worthy of careful investigation and attention. The chest itself was clearly an antique of considerable value and historical significance, showing evidence of expert craftsmanship and the kind of attention to detail that characterized the finest furniture of the late 19th century. The brass fittings were substantial and showed signs of regular maintenance, indicating that Eleanor had accessed the contents regularly throughout her life and had ensured that the mechanism remained functional. The lock was substantial but showed recent use, and Sam could see that it would accept the same brass key that had opened the room. As he inserted the key and felt it turn smoothly in the well-maintained mechanism, Sam had the sense that he was about to cross a threshold that would fundamentally change his understanding of himself and his family. As Sam lifted the heavy wooden lid, he was greeted by the sight of carefully organized documents, photographs, and personal items that appeared to span more than a century of family history. The contents were arranged in multiple layers, with the most recent items on top and older materials underneath, suggesting that Eleanor had organized everything chronologically to tell a complete and coherent story. The preservation of the materials was remarkable, with documents and photographs showing minimal signs of age or deterioration. Eleanor had clearly taken extraordinary care to protect these materials from moisture, light, and other environmental factors that could cause damage over time. The first item Sam encountered was a thick manila envelope with his name written on it in Eleanor's handwriting, along with a notation indicating that it should be read first before examining any other materials in the chest. The envelope was sealed with wax, suggesting the formal importance that Eleanor had attached to its contents. Sam opened the envelope carefully and found a lengthy handwritten letter that began with the words, "My dear great-nephew Samuel, if you are reading this, then you have inherited not just my property, but the responsibility for preserving and continuing our family's true legacy. What I'm about to tell you will shock and perhaps anger you, but it is the truth that our family deserves to know." Eleanor's letter continued for more than 10 pages, written in the careful script of someone who had taken great care to ensure that every word was clear, meaningful, and precisely chosen. She explained that she had followed Sam's military career from a distance for more than a decade, reading about his decorations and achievements in military publications, maintaining correspondence with people who could provide her with information about his service and character, and feeling deep pride in his accomplishments and the man he had become. But the letter's most shocking revelation came in the second paragraph, where Eleanor wrote, "What you don't know, and what no one in our family has known for more than 50 years, is that you are not just inheriting a modest farm property, you are inheriting a fortune that has been systematically stolen and hidden by people who were never entitled to it, and you are the one who has been chosen to restore justice and reclaim what rightfully belongs to the Morrison family." Sam's hands began to tremble as he continued reading Eleanor's explanation. According to her detailed account, the Morrison family had been the victims of a sophisticated and long-running conspiracy involving corrupt lawyers, dishonest bank officials, bribed government authorities, and distant relatives who had systematically stolen what should have been their inheritance from earlier generations. Eleanor had spent more than 30 years quietly investigating and documenting this conspiracy, gathering evidence and building a case while living modestly on the income from the farm and avoiding any actions that might alert the conspirators to her investigation. She had worked with private investigators, honest lawyers, and historical researchers to piece together a story of fraud and theft that stretched back to the 1920s. The letter explained that Sam's great-great-grandfather, Ezra Morrison, had been far more successful and wealthy than anyone in the family had ever known or suspected. In addition to his farming and ranching operations, which had been substantial and profitable, Ezra had made extraordinarily shrewd investments in early oil exploration, railroad development, mining operations, and land speculation that had made him one of the wealthiest men in the Dakota Territory and later North Dakota. When Ezra died in 1923, his estate should have been worth the equivalent of more than $100 million in modern terms. The wealth included not just liquid assets, but extensive land holdings, mineral rights, railroad investments, and industrial partnerships that would have provided income for generations of his descendants. But according to Eleanor's investigation, Ezra's will had been systematically altered and corrupted after his death by his attorney, Walter Blackwood, working in conspiracy with distant relatives and corrupt officials who had bribed judges, forged documents, and manipulated court proceedings to redirect the inheritance away from Ezra's direct descendants. The true will, which Eleanor had discovered hidden in Blackwood's old law office during a renovation in the 1970s, left the bulk of Ezra's massive fortune to his children and grandchildren, with specific provisions for ensuring that the wealth would be used responsibly to benefit the family and the broader community for generations to come. Ezra had been a man of vision and principle, who had wanted his success to create opportunities for his descendants, while also contributing to the development and prosperity of North Dakota. Eleanor's letter detailed how she had spent decades quietly gathering evidence of the conspiracy, working with honest lawyers and investigators to build a comprehensive case that could restore the family's stolen inheritance. She had been careful to avoid alerting the conspirators or their descendants, who had continued to benefit from the stolen wealth for more than 50 years, living in luxury while the legitimate heirs struggled with modest circumstances. Instead, Eleanor had methodically documented every aspect of the fraud while living quietly on the farm and maintaining the appearance of being a simple, elderly woman with limited resources. Her investigation had been thorough and professional, involving forensic analysis of documents, genealogical research, financial investigations, and legal research that had consumed thousands of hours and significant personal expense. The letter explained that Eleanor had chosen Sam as her heir, not just because of his military service, though that had been an important factor, but because his character, integrity, and leadership abilities demonstrated that he would use the restored inheritance responsibly and would have the courage and determination to pursue the complex legal action necessary to fully expose the conspiracy and recover all the stolen assets. Eleanor had also been impressed by Sam's loyalty to Dakota and his willingness to make personal sacrifices to maintain important relationships, seeing these qualities as evidence that he understood the true meaning of family and would honor the responsibilities that came with recovering the Morrison family legacy. Sam set down the letter with hands that were shaking so badly he could barely control them, and looked at Dakota, who was watching him with the concerned expression that the dog displayed when he sensed his partner was experiencing severe stress or emotional distress. The implications of what Eleanor had revealed were staggering, not just the financial impact, but the realization that his family had been living in modest circumstances for generations while their rightful inheritance had been stolen and systematically looted by people who had no legitimate claim to it. The conspiracy that Eleanor described wasn't just theft on a massive scale, it was a generational crime that had affected every member of the Morrison family for more than 50 years. Sam's grandparents, his parents, and countless other relatives had lived their entire lives without the opportunities, education, and security that should have been their birthright. Sam returned to the chest and began examining the other materials that Eleanor had preserved as evidence of her investigation. The documents were meticulously organized and included photocopies of the original will, bank records, investment documents, correspondence, legal filings, and investigative reports that painted a clear and comprehensive picture of the conspiracy and its devastating impact on the family. Eleanor had also included detailed genealogical research that traced the Morrison family lineage and established Sam's legitimate claim to the inheritance, along with similar documentation for other family members who had been deprived of their rightful inheritance. The research was professional and comprehensive, meeting the standards that would be required for legal proceedings. Among the most damaging and compelling evidence were documents that showed how Walter Blackwood had used his position as Ezra's attorney to systematically manipulate the estate settlement process. Blackwood had created false debts and obligations that reduced the apparent value of the inheritance, while secretly transferring assets to accounts controlled by his co-conspirators and their families. The conspiracy had been sophisticated and carefully planned, taking advantage of the limited communication and record-keeping capabilities of the 1920s to hide their activities from oversight. Blackwood had bribed court officials, forged signatures on legal documents, and created an elaborate network of shell companies and false identities that allowed the conspirators to steal and hide assets while maintaining the appearance of legitimacy. But Eleanor's investigation had also revealed that many of the stolen assets still existed and could be recovered through appropriate legal action. The conspirators had been careful to legitimize their theft by creating trusts, corporations, and other legal entities, but these structures were still traceable, and many of the original assets could be identified and reclaimed by Ezra's legitimate heirs. The chest also contained Eleanor's extensive correspondence with lawyers, private investigators, forensic accountants, and historical researchers who had helped her build an airtight case for recovering the stolen inheritance. Several prominent law firms had reviewed her evidence and had concluded that she had extremely strong grounds for legal action, but Eleanor had chosen to wait until she could find a family member who had the character, resources, and determination to pursue the case effectively. Among the legal documents was a complete draft lawsuit that Eleanor had prepared with her attorneys, ready to be filed as soon as Sam was prepared to move forward with the case. The lawsuit named dozens of defendants, including the descendants of the original conspirators, banks and investment firms that had knowingly participated in handling stolen assets, and government officials who had been bribed to overlook irregularities in the estate settlement. The potential value of the stolen inheritance was breathtaking and almost incomprehensible. Eleanor's financial experts had calculated that if Ezra's original investments had been properly managed and allowed to grow over the decades, with reinvestment of dividends and normal appreciation, the Morrison family estate should now be worth more than $200 million. Even accounting for legal fees, the challenges of recovering assets that had been hidden for so long, and the possibility that some assets might have been legitimately consumed or lost over the decades, Sam stood to inherit a fortune that would transform not just his own life, but the lives of his extended family and potentially the entire community. But Eleanor's letter made clear that the inheritance came with significant responsibilities and moral obligations. She had written, "This wealth was stolen from our family, but it was also stolen from the community that Ezra intended to benefit through his charitable bequests and local investments. Recovering this inheritance means not just restoring our family's financial security, but honoring Ezra's original intentions and using this wealth to make a positive difference in the world." The chest also contained Ezra's personal papers and correspondence, which revealed him to be a man of exceptional intelligence, integrity, and community commitment. His letters and business documents showed someone who had built his wealth through hard work, shrewd investments, and ethical business practices, and who had planned to use his success to benefit not just his family, but the broader community. Ezra had written extensively about his plans to build schools, hospitals, libraries, and other institutions that would benefit the people of North Dakota for generations to come. He had also planned to establish scholarship funds, support agricultural research, and invest in infrastructure projects that would promote the long-term development and prosperity of the region. The theft of his inheritance had not only impoverished his family, but had deprived the entire community of the improvements and opportunities that Ezra had intended to provide. The conspiracy had stolen not just money, but the future that Ezra had envisioned for North Dakota and its people. Sam spent the rest of the morning and much of the afternoon reading through Eleanor's evidence and beginning to understand the full scope of what she had discovered. The conspiracy had involved not just the theft of financial assets, but the systematic destruction of family records and historical documents that would have revealed the truth about Ezra's wealth and intentions. Eleanor had worked tirelessly to reconstruct this history and to preserve it for future generations. Her investigation had uncovered family stories, business records, and personal correspondence that provided a complete picture of Ezra's life, his success, and his vision for how his wealth should be used. Dakota remained close to Sam throughout his examination of the chest contents, occasionally alerting to sounds outside the house, but primarily focusing on providing emotional support as Sam processed the overwhelming information that Eleanor had preserved. The dog seemed to understand that they had discovered something that would change their lives dramatically and permanently. As Sam continued reading through the documents, he found Eleanor's detailed instructions for pursuing the legal case and recovering the stolen assets. She had provided him with contact information for the lawyers and investigators who had been working on the case, along with strategic recommendations for how to proceed without alerting the defendants to the strength of the evidence against them. Eleanor had also included personal letters from other family members who had suspected that something was wrong with the official version of Ezra's estate settlement, but had lacked the resources, knowledge, or determination to investigate effectively. These letters painted a heartbreaking picture of a family that had struggled financially for generations, while wondering why they seemed to have been excluded from the prosperity that other branches of the family appeared to enjoy. The correspondence revealed that several family members had tried to research the family's financial history over the years, but their efforts had been frustrated by missing documents, uncooperative officials, and the sophisticated methods that the conspirators had used to hide their activities. Eleanor's investigation had succeeded where others had failed because of her persistence, her resources, and her willingness to spend decades building a comprehensive case. The chest contained photographs and personal mementos that brought Ezra Morrison to life as more than just names and dates in legal documents. The pictures showed a distinguished man of obvious intelligence and determination, someone who had built a successful enterprise through hard work, innovation, and shrewd decision-making. His correspondence revealed someone who cared deeply about his family and community, and who had specific, detailed plans for using his wealth to benefit both. Among the most moving items in the chest was a series of letters that Ezra had written to his unborn great-grandchildren, expressing his hopes that the wealth he was building would provide them with opportunities for education, service, and contribution to society. He had written, "I have been blessed with success in business and investments, but true wealth comes from using our resources to help others and to build a better world for future generations. I hope that my descendants will understand this and will use their inheritance wisely and generously." Sam realized that recovering the stolen inheritance would not just be about financial gain, but about honoring Ezra's memory and fulfilling his vision for how the wealth should be used. The legal case would be complex, expensive, and potentially dangerous, but it would also be an opportunity to right a historical wrong and to ensure that Ezra's legacy was properly preserved and continued. The chest also contained detailed information about the current status of the stolen assets and the people who had benefited from the conspiracy over the decades. Eleanor's investigators had tracked many of the assets to specific accounts, properties, and investments that could be identified and reclaimed through legal action. The evidence was comprehensive enough that several law firms had expressed confidence that a significant portion of the inheritance could be recovered. Eleanor had also documented the current financial status of the conspiracy's beneficiaries, many of whom were living in luxury on wealth that rightfully belonged to the Morrison family. The investigation had revealed that some of the stolen assets had been used to fund lavish lifestyles, political contributions, and business investments that had generated additional wealth for people who had no legitimate claim to the original inheritance. As the afternoon wore on, Sam found himself overwhelmed by the scope of Eleanor's revelation and the magnitude of the responsibility that came with the knowledge she had preserved. The decision to pursue the legal case would involve years of complex litigation, significant legal expenses that could consume his savings, and the possibility of making powerful enemies among the people who had benefited from the stolen wealth for more than 50 years. But Sam also understood that he had been given an extraordinary opportunity to restore his family's legacy and to honor the memory of ancestors who had worked hard and made sacrifices to build something meaningful for future generations. The theft of Ezra's inheritance had not just impoverished the Morrison family financially, it had robbed them of their history, their identity, and their understanding of their own potential and heritage. The military values that had guided Sam throughout his career, honor, integrity, service, and dedication to mission accomplishment, were clearly applicable to the situation Eleanor had presented to him. This was a mission that required courage, determination, and a willingness to fight for what was right regardless of the personal cost. Dakota had been monitoring Sam's emotional state throughout the day, and as evening approached, the dog moved closer and rested his head on Sam's knee in the way that had provided comfort during the most difficult moments of their military service. The German Shepherd seemed to understand that they had discovered something that would require all of their combined courage and determination to address properly. That evening, Sam sat in Eleanor's study with Dakota beside him, reading through more of the legal documents and correspondence that Eleanor had preserved. The evidence was overwhelming, and the case for recovering the stolen inheritance appeared to be extremely strong, but Sam knew that moving forward would require careful planning, significant resources, and the kind of strategic thinking that had served him well in military operations. Sam's military experience had taught him the critical importance of thorough preparation and strategic planning when facing complex challenges, and he approached Eleanor's revelation with the same methodical approach that had kept him alive and successful in combat operations around the world. He began making detailed lists of questions to ask the lawyers, strategies for managing the legal costs, and plans for how to use any recovered assets in ways that would honor both Ezra's memory and Eleanor's expectations. The next morning, Sam called the law firm that Eleanor had been working with and arranged for an immediate consultation about moving forward with the case. The senior partner, James Crawford, had been expecting Sam's call and was intimately familiar with every aspect of Eleanor's investigation and the evidence she had compiled over more than 3 decades. Crawford explained that the legal case would be extraordinarily complex and would likely take years to resolve completely, but that Eleanor's evidence was comprehensive enough to provide strong grounds for recovering a substantial portion of the stolen inheritance. The firm was prepared to work on a contingency basis, taking payment from any assets that were successfully recovered rather than requiring upfront legal fees that Sam couldn't afford. The consultation also revealed that Eleanor had been more strategic and sophisticated in her planning than Sam had initially realized. She had not only gathered evidence of the historical conspiracy, but had also been quietly monitoring the current activities of the people who had benefited from the stolen wealth, ensuring that assets hadn't been hidden or transferred beyond the reach of legal action. Crawford's team had already begun preliminary legal action based on Eleanor's research, filing motions to prevent the destruction of documents and to freeze assets that appeared to be directly traceable to Ezra's original estate. The legal machinery was already in motion, and Sam's decision to move forward would accelerate a process that had been years in the planning and preparation. Over the following weeks, Sam worked closely with Crawford's team to review the evidence, refine the legal strategy, and prepare for what would likely be a lengthy and complex legal battle. The case attracted attention from legal scholars, historians, and journalists who were fascinated by the scope of the conspiracy and the meticulous research that Eleanor had conducted to expose it. The legal proceedings moved more quickly than anyone had expected, partly because Eleanor's evidence was so comprehensive and compelling, and partly because several of the defendants chose to settle rather than face the risk of criminal charges for participating in the conspiracy. The settlements provided immediate vindication of Eleanor's investigation and began the process of recovering stolen assets. Dakota played an important and active role in helping Sam manage the stress and emotional challenges of pursuing the case. The dog's military training in alertness and detection proved useful during meetings with lawyers and investigators, and his presence provided Sam with the emotional stability needed to navigate the complex legal and financial issues involved in the case. The legal case also attracted the attention of federal law enforcement agencies, who began their own investigation into the conspiracy and its implications for other similar cases. The scope and sophistication of the fraud suggested that it might not have been an isolated incident, and investigators began examining other estate settlements from the same time period for evidence of similar conspiracies. Within 8 months of opening Eleanor's chest, Sam had recovered more than $40 million in assets that could be directly traced to Ezra's original estate. The recovery included not just liquid assets, but substantial land holdings, mineral rights, and investment portfolios that had been generating income for the conspiracy's beneficiaries for decades. But the financial recovery was only part of what Sam gained from Eleanor's revelation. The process of pursuing the legal case had connected him with dozens of distant relatives who had been scattered across the country, many of whom had family stories and memories that helped fill in the gaps in the Morrison family history. The legal case had become a family reunion and a healing process that restored connections that had been broken by the original conspiracy. Sam also discovered that Eleanor had been absolutely correct about the community impact of recovering the inheritance. Ezra's original will had included substantial charitable bequests that were now being honored for the first time, providing funding for schools, hospitals, libraries, and community development projects that would benefit the people of North Dakota for generations to come. The recovery of the inheritance also allowed Sam to fulfill several of his own long-held dreams and aspirations. He established a comprehensive foundation to support veterans and their families, providing resources for education, job training, mental health services, and assistance with the transition from military to civilian life. The foundation was named in honor of both Ezra Morrison and Eleanor Morrison, recognizing their contributions to the family legacy and their vision for using wealth to benefit others. Dakota became the unofficial mascot and ambassador of the foundation, participating in events and programs that helped connect veterans with resources and support. The dog's military background and his bond with Sam made him an effective representative for the Foundation's mission and helped demonstrate the importance of the relationships between veterans and their service animals. Sam also used part of the recovered inheritance to restore the family farmhouse to its original grandeur, while adding modern amenities that made it suitable for hosting Foundation events and family gatherings. The property became a gathering place for the extended Morrison family and a symbol of how persistence, integrity, and courage could overcome even the most sophisticated attempts at fraud and theft. The legal case attracted national attention and inspired other families to investigate their own histories for evidence of similar conspiracies. Sam became an advocate for elder fraud prevention and worked with federal agencies to develop better protections for estate planning and inheritance law. The success of the legal case also revealed the broader scope of corruption that had affected many families in the early 20th century, when limited communications and record-keeping had made it easier for unscrupulous lawyers and officials to manipulate estate settlements. Sam's case became a model for how modern investigative techniques and legal strategies could be used to recover stolen inheritances even decades after the original crimes. Helena's farmhouse was designated as a historical site in recognition of its role in preserving and eventually recovering the Morrison family legacy. The house served as a reminder that family history and identity could be preserved and restored even when powerful forces had worked systematically to destroy them. 1 year after opening Eleanor's chest, Sam stood in the same room where he had made the discovery that changed his life. But now the space had been converted into the headquarters for the Morrison Family Foundation. The walls were lined with photographs and documents that told the complete story of the family's history, from Ezra's original success through the conspiracy that stole their inheritance to Eleanor's patient investigation and the legal victory that restored their legacy. As Sam reflected on the year since opening Eleanor's chest, he understood that the discovery had given him much more than financial wealth. It had provided him with identity, purpose, and connection to a family legacy that stretched back more than a century. The letter that had rewritten the will overnight had also rewritten his understanding of himself and his place in the world. The veteran and his dog had opened a family chest expecting to find historical documents and personal memorabilia, but what they had discovered was evidence of a conspiracy that had shaped their family's destiny for generations. The single letter that Eleanor had left for Sam had not only revealed the truth about their stolen inheritance, but had also provided him with the opportunity to restore his family's legacy and to use that restoration to benefit others. Dakota had been instrumental in the discovery, not just because his presence had encouraged Sam to explore the locked room, but because his loyalty and support had given Sam the emotional strength needed to pursue a complex and challenging legal case. The bond between the veteran and his dog had been tested and strengthened through the process of uncovering and addressing a historical injustice. The Morrison family legacy had been stolen and hidden for more than 50 years, but Eleanor's patient investigation and Sam's willingness to pursue justice had restored not just their financial inheritance, but their identity and their ability to honor the vision that Ezra Morrison had had for using wealth to benefit family and community. The chest in Eleanor's locked room had contained more than documents and photographs. It had contained the key to understanding the Morrison family's true history and their rightful place in the community. The letter that had rewritten the will overnight had also rewritten the future for Sam, Dakota, and countless others who would benefit from the restored Morrison family legacy. As Sam looked out over the North Dakota prairie that had been home to his family for more than a century, he understood that opening Eleanor's chest had been about much more than discovering a hidden inheritance. It had been about restoring connections to the past, understanding the present, and building a foundation for a future that honored the best values and intentions of previous generations. The wind that had shaped the prairie for millennia continued to blow across the land, but now it carried with it the knowledge that some truths could survive even the most determined attempts to bury them, and that family legacies could be restored through patience, courage, and the unbreakable bonds between those who understand the meaning of loyalty and service. Sam Morrison and Dakota had opened a family chest and found a letter that changed everything they thought they knew about their history and their future. But more importantly, they had discovered that some discoveries are worth whatever effort is required to honor them properly, and that the most valuable inheritances are not just financial, but include the responsibility to use whatever we receive in service of others and in honor of those who came before us. The North Dakota farmhouse stood as testimony to the power of truth to survive even decades of concealment, and to the importance of preserving family history for future generations who might someday need to understand where they came from in order to determine where they should go. The veteran and his dog had become guardians of that history and stewards of a legacy that would continue to grow and benefit others for generations to come. As the seasons changed and the first anniversary of the discovery approached, Sam reflected on how completely his life had been transformed by Eleanor's revelation. The modest farm inheritance that he had initially seen as an opportunity for a quiet retirement had become the foundation for a mission that honored his military values, while serving his family and community in ways he had never imagined possible. The restoration of the Morrison family legacy had also attracted the attention of other families with similar histories, and Sam found himself serving as an advisor and advocate for people who suspected that their own inheritances had been stolen or mismanaged. The Morrison case had established legal precedents and investigative procedures that made it easier for other families to pursue justice and recover their stolen legacies. Dakota remained Sam's constant companion throughout the transformation of their lives, adapting to their new roles and responsibilities while maintaining the loyalty and alertness that had characterized his military service. The dog seemed to understand that their mission had evolved from military operations to community service, but that the fundamental values of dedication, service, and protection of others remained unchanged. The success of the Morrison Family Foundation and the attention it had attracted led to opportunities for Sam to speak at military reunions, veteran organizations, and community events throughout the region. His story became an inspiration for other veterans who were struggling with the transition to civilian life and looking for ways to find purpose and meaning in their post-military careers. The legal victory had also revealed the importance of preserving family history and documents, and Sam became an advocate for genealogical research and historical preservation. The Morrison case demonstrated how family stories and documents that might seem mundane or unimportant could actually contain vital information about rights, inheritance, and identity that could be crucial for future generations. Eleanor's meticulous record-keeping and patient investigation had made the legal victory possible, and Sam established scholarship programs to support young people who were interested in careers in legal research, historical investigation, and genealogical studies. The scholarships ensured that Eleanor's legacy of thorough research and dedication to truth would continue to benefit future generations. The farmhouse itself had become a symbol of the power of persistence and the importance of preserving family history. Visitors came from across the country to learn about the Morrison case and to understand how ordinary families could become victims of sophisticated fraud, but could also fight back and recover what was rightfully theirs. As Sam stood on the porch where he had first contemplated the mystery of Eleanor's locked room, he understood that the discovery in the chest had given him everything he had been seeking since leaving military service: purpose, identity, connection to family and community, and the opportunity to continue serving others in ways that honored his training and values. The veteran and his dog had opened a family chest seeking nothing more than understanding of their inheritance, but what they had discovered was a legacy of courage, determination, and service that connected them to previous generations and provided them with the foundation for serving future ones. The letter that had rewritten the will overnight had also rewritten their understanding of what it meant to be part of a family that had always been willing to fight for what was right, regardless of the personal cost. The North Dakota wind continued to blow across the prairie, carrying with it the stories of all the families who had struggled and succeeded on this unforgiving land. But now it also carried the knowledge that justice could prevail, even when it had been delayed for decades, and that some bonds between family members could survive even the most determined attempts to destroy them. Sam Morrison and Dakota had found much more than money in Eleanor's chest. They had found their place in a story that stretched back more than a century and forward into a future that would be shaped by their willingness to honor the past while serving the present. The chest had contained the key to understanding not just what they had inherited, but what they were responsible for preserving and passing on to future generations of the Morrison family and the community they served.